and welcome to the Amplifying Scientific Innovation podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Sophia Ononye, founder and CEO of the Sophia Consulting Firm, a life science marketing and communications consultancy that was established in New York City with the goal of amplifying scientific innovation. The goal of this podcast is to showcase scientific innovation stemming from global life science companies through conversations with senior leaders who share their unique leadership journey, corporate vision, and industry outlook. My guest today is Dr. Derrell Porter, founder and CEO of Cellevolve, and starting with his role as an engagement manager for McKinsey. Dr. Porter has secured roles of increasing responsibility in prominent biopharmaceutical companies, inclusive of Amgen, AbbVie, Gilead, and most recently Atara Biotherapeutics, where he served as a global head of commercial. Derrell is a team and company builder who bridges science, business, and value creation on behalf of small and large global biotech companies. And he has led the development and launch of several of the most advanced and often first-in-class and first-in-company therapeutics. Derrell is a board member of Biosodia Pharmaceuticals, where I also serve as a key advisor. In addition, Dr. Porter recently joined the board of Portal Innovations and also serves as an advisory committee member for the Penn School of Medicine. Derrell was a Thurgood Marshall Scholar as a psychobiology undergraduate at the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA. In addition, he holds both an MBA and an MD from the University of Pennsylvania. I believe in building relationships, and I'm incredibly proud of the relationship I have built with the amazing Dr. Porter during his successful tenure at Atara. And I'm very excited to learn more about his entrepreneurial journey as a founder and CEO of Cellevolve. Welcome to the show, Derrell.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here, Sophia.
Great. So I will start with probably my favorite question. What is your definition of scientific innovation?
Oh, good question. I would say in biopharma, I would define innovation as a novel and previously unidentified molecule or process addressing a previously unmet medical need or just an issue. So, innovation in our space generally comes in the forms of new therapeutics, but I tend to broaden that definition to include processes, approaches to business, or, business system problems as well.
So in other words, even if it fails, it's still innovation, correct? It's not always about bringing therapeutics to the market, but the process itself, correct?
Absolutely, because as is well chronicled, not only in entrepreneurship, but definitely in scientific innovation, failure is very informative, right? I mean, it obviously clarifies that something does not work, but during that process, you may learn things that do work or could work. And so I think it's broadly innovation, pushing the envelope doesn't always equal a product being approved.
Yeah, completely agree with you. And, I went through a very short list of some of your achievements today, but I'm curious to know the one single achievement that you think is the most impactful and the one that contributes the most to your current role as a founder and CEO of an emerging biopharmaceutical company.
Yeah, that would, I was thinking a bit about that. I'll give you two answers. So,
okay.
One is a bit more of a package in the sense, I appreciate the wonderful introduction. And I think as you were describing some of my experiences, it's hard for me to pick one, right? Because I really had the good fortune of playing a role, sometimes large, sometimes smaller, in at least 6 major product innovations throughout my career, right? And I would include, Embro, Neulasta at Amgen, Venclexta at AbbVie, Sovaldi, Harvoni, and Genvoya at Gilead, just to name a few, right? And, and I picked those particular products because they were either game-changing for patients and or game changing for the company in and of itself. And so, you know, and I played a variety of roles, you know, as a member of course, a broader team that worked on those projects. But, you know, I'm really proud of what those products has meant to our space and, you know, and really what they've done. If I would say, if you were forcing me to choose one, I would have to say Sovaldi, right? I mean, Sovaldi it's one of those products that will clearly go down in history as one of the most significant innovations and development in our industry's history. And, you know, to have played a role in that program, you know, I'm just really, really proud of that. And it was, I think, educational for the world beyond its impact on patients, because, you know, it taught us how to think about pricing in a different way, how to think about a cure, right? Because obviously many therapies are more chronic or not necessarily curative, but obviously Sovaldi being a cure, you know, that had a very, very different impact on our business and the world, and how to think about developing and launching products that have a curative intent when the patient population is not growing and frankly is shrinking by the day. So I would, if I were forced to choose one, I would say Sovaldi.
No worries. I completely understand. It's like asking you to pick a favorite child and you're never going to say that. So I get it. And so thinking now about where you are today, what is the meaning behind the name of your company, Cell Evolve Bio, and what is your vision for the future?
Yes, so Cell Evolve, you know, combination obviously of two words. You know, as the name really states, you know, first and foremost, our focus is a transformative new mechanism of action and new approach to treating diseases. And so, you know, we're committed and passionate about that space. So that's one. The evolve part really references, you know, one of my core operating principles and one of the core founding values of the company is this concept of evolution or commitment to change. And the space will evolve and constantly is evolving every day. And so any company that's committed to a particular form of a better mousetrap, I think, you know, might be challenged. And so, you know, we wanted to really embody this concept of constantly evolving with the space as it emerges. So that's
great.
So
your vision.
Yeah, so the vision, we describe ourselves as a commercialization focused company. And that means that we, at this point in time, are not focused on the research side of the business. We're focused on development going forward. So we are interested in phase 2 and later programs that we will complete the development, i.e. pivotal phase 2 or 3 studies, file and commercialize up to and including manufacturing.
Okay, well, that's remarkable.
Yeah, let me just add 2 points to it. A couple things I want to highlight. You know, first off, I didn't specify a specific type of technology, and that's by design. We're seeking products that are meaningful and have an impact on patients, kind of regardless of the technical platform that they have. Number one. Number two, we are founded on the concept of getting these products to patients. So that means that we are focused on commercialization. So, you know, a lot of companies, you know, is less of a priority or maybe a lower priority for them to focus on commercial. It's one of the core reasons we exist, is to actually commercialize therapeutics.
Okay, very well said. I'm curious to know, since you already answered my follow-on question, which is about ongoing work or what your potential work might be, how has COVID-19 impacted that vision that you have for your company?
Good question. And I will tell you, it has slowed things down, really is the headline I would give you. So there was a moment, so we started the company beginning of this year, and COVID hit in full force essentially in March, right at the end of Q1. And there was, from a company building perspective and a fundraising perspective, there was a pause really in the whole space from March to about kind of mid to late May, right? Nothing was happening. All of the VCs that we were talking to all said, you know, call us back in a month. And then when I called them back, they said, call us back in another month. So that was one. And on the other side, even from an in-licensing perspective, it was kind of the same dynamic. So we had a set of targets that we were going after. And those companies basically said, look, you know, our hands are full right now. We're trying to figure out how we're going to manage through COVID and everyone working from home and executing on our clinical trials. And so it was a pause. So I would say, back to the headline, it slowed everything down. And really it was a pause for a couple of months.
And how are you doing now? Things are much better, I presume?
Yeah. So we, you know, fortunately it picked back up right at the beginning of summer. And, you know, traditionally summer is a very slow time period for everyone. But because of the pandemic, I think there was a bit more activity in the summer than I think one would expect or typically. So we were able to really get back going in the summertime, and now we're moving fast. And I would say, you know, back on our regular pace.
Oh, that is great. And if we stick to the COVID story for a little bit longer, what do you think we could have done as an industry to mitigate the impact of COVID-19?
You know, with hindsight being 2020, I think coordination probably was the missed opportunity. And that's not pointing the fingers at anyone or any one, you know, sector of our business. But I think had we known that we were going to not have a coordinated effort nationally, that it would have been better if the industry had stepped up together earlier, right? And so, you know, all of the different industry organizations from bio to pharma and others that started to think through, okay, how do we manage this as an industry going forward? That's probably the one thing, looking back, we could have done a better job of. But again, I mean, who would have known that we would have ended up as one of the poorly performing countries in the world?
I know.
So a little, you know, a little bit of an unfair look back. But, you know, given where we are, I think that would have been the missed opportunity.
Yeah, I agree with you. And you've been in the industry now for some time across multiple functions and in different regions as well, right? So how do you think the biotechnology industry, how has it changed in the past 15 years? And what are some loopholes?
Yes. So, you know, I would say the really encouraging thing is that it's been generally positive. I think, you know, I would say the three areas of change over the past 10 to 15 years. First off is just the amount of capital and resulting company creation. I mean, there's just been a tremendous amount of money poured into our space, as evidenced by I think it was in Q2, it was a record biotech venture funding quarter, the highest ever. And, you know, I think that's just evidence of all of the novel innovation and talent in our space. And so I think that's been a tremendous positive development for us. I would say the second thing is just the globalization of our business. You know, if you go back 10, 15 years, it was US-centric, US, right? And Europe was a bit of a afterthought, and the rest of the world was a non-starter for all intents and purposes. But, and I'm specifically talking about kind of on the biotech side, right? Big pharma always have businesses there. But I think that's changed, right? So, there's a growth in the number of European companies and really most notably in China, right? I mean, there's been an explosion in the number of Chinese companies that are, formed and creating new products and advancing therapeutics. And so I think that would be number two in terms of the big positive development. I think this is a good thing, for us. That means that there's a lot more talent, there's a lot more innovation, a lot more markets and patients to treat at the end of the day. And probably the third thing is the pace of change is quickening, right? Like your ability to have a lead or a competitive advantage in any aspect of our business, that window is shrinking. Right? Like it's just so many developments that are happening all over the place that everything's moving very, very fast. And so, I think that's, I also think that's a good thing, but it does require a different operating mode in order to be successful in a fast moving environment.
Very well said. And I think you mentioned this earlier, that your company, Cell Evolve, is technology agnostic, at least at this point, right? So is there any technology or company that you're currently excited about, and why?
Yeah, I would say, back to my previous expansive answer, I'll give you two. I'll give you two companies.
Okay.
And this is less on the technology side, but more of like wonderful, innovative enterprises. So one is Bluebird. I have to admit, I am, and I don't know their CEO, I know who he is, but, and I know some people there. I have to admit, they are a very impressive organization. I appreciate the culture that at least I can see from outside looking in is quite innovative and leading. I really appreciate their ambition. And I also really appreciate their commitment to getting these products out to patients, right? I mean, they were very early on open about some of their novel pricing strategy. They're also talking about kind of the commitment to getting these things to patients. So, I really am impressed by them and have been continually impressed with that company. So I'm always watching what they do and, the progress that they're making. So that's one on the public side. On the private side is EQRX. So this is Alexis Boris's company, which is they also have a very big ambition of trying to change the whole market and pricing dynamics for therapeutics. And, there's not a lot in the public domain in terms of what they're attempting to do. But what I like about them is their ambition, right? So, they're trying to develop a different kind of company. And those two really are, simpatico in terms of my own thinking. Like Cell Evolve is expected to be and planning on being a different kind of company, right? And so, I really respect what those two enterprises have been doing. And so that's why I say it's less of a technology comment as opposed to, business, culture, strategy that I find appealing about those two.
I honestly cannot wait to have a conversation again with you, maybe in a year or two, just to see how your thoughts have evolved in that time period. So my next question for you is a bit more philosophical, and I like that now as an entrepreneur, as the founder of a biotech company, that you can actually give me the real answer that I'm looking for. So what are what are some key consideration factors that you believe will be important for sustaining innovation in the life science industry?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I would say, and these are maybe fairly obvious answers you may have heard from others, but I would say IP and pricing. IP, I think right now is probably not under assault. as much, but such a critical foundational component of what we do. And so ensuring that intellectual property remains protected, especially globally, is just mission critical. So that would be one. The second one is pricing. That's one that's clearly under assault. And I think that fairly the industry has not always managed this as effectively as I think we could have. Being egregious with price increases, sometimes every 6 months, just doesn't make a lot of sense from the outside looking in. It's very hard to explain to a patient, why a product costs X, Y, or Z, or why the price went up for this amount. And so we're, as an industry, under a lot of pressure on the pricing front and need to justify the prices that we charge for meaningful therapeutics. And I think that's right? I think that we should continue to innovate and prove to ourselves and the world and patients why, a certain drug commands a certain price point in the market. And so I think we need to allow ourselves and frankly have the freedom to price products appropriately, because that's critical for funding innovation and to attracting capital. And so I think that's the one that I would say I'm, like a lot of us, the most concerned about, that there's going to be some governmental action, and they keep threatening, obviously, on a regular basis to do something about pricing. Unfortunately, nothing's come to pass, but I do think we as an industry could do a better job in managing that aspect of our business. And so I do believe having some freedom to continue to price the products corresponding to their value is critical.
I agree with you. I think there was a Pew Research poll that was conducted last year, and the pharmaceutical industry came in at the bottom, meaning that we were the most hated industry in terms of reputation. And pricing is one of those reasons. And I think, to the point you made earlier, there has to be an element of education. But also, I think that we owe it to ourselves, hopefully through platforms like this, to educate people on why the prices exist as they do. And hopefully that will lead to some changes in regulations. But we're all, I guess, yet to see what the future holds.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Great. So my final question for you is simple. Do you have any other thoughts, any commentary, anything that you want to share? The floor is yours.
Excellent. Well, so first of all, I just want to say thank you for the time and interviewing, and frankly, what you're doing. I think trying to get the word out and educate our community and the broad world about scientific innovation, I think is fantastic, and I applaud what you're doing, and I think this is a wonderful platform to do that. So kudos to what you're doing, Sophia. I think this is critically important. The last thing I will leave you with is that I do, Cell Evolve, we're in the earliest stages. And so, I would hope your audience would just continue to keep their eyes and ears peeled for, what we're doing. But I think we have a pretty clear strategy. We have a number of things that are actively being developed as we speak. And so, I hope to communicate our progress, in the coming months. So stay tuned.
Great. I applaud you for your bravery. It takes a lot to be an entrepreneur and to put yourself out there. And I cannot wait to bring you back in the future so you can tell us about the evolution of Cell Evolve. So,
absolutely.
Well, thank you, Dr. Potter. It's been nice to see your face again.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for the time, Sophia. I appreciate it.